Hello and welcome to our webinar for final reports, keys to a successful grant closeout. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about specifically the final report form and what information you need to get that report filed and submitted with our office so you can close your grant. My name is Melinda Hutchinson. I'm one of the grant specialists here in the grants office at the Minnesota Historical Society. And I take a first pass at all the final reports. So I will be looking for the report being complete, having all the uploaded materials it needs, and I kind of do a first pass before I send it over to the content reviewer for their review. So let's get started. So why do we have a final report? What does it tell us? The final report that you submit tells us how the project turned out. Was it successful? Was it not successful? Did you have any issues? Was there anything important about it you wanted to tell us? Did it just go as planned? Anything can happen. So we're happy to know, what did happen? Who was involved? How many people did you hire? How many volunteers worked on the project? How many of your staff worked on the project? Is an in-kind capacity. How much money did you spend? Did you spend all the grant funds? Did you have any funding left? Did you have to put in some of your own cash match? How much time did you spend on the grant? Did it take the whole 12 months? Did you need an extension? Did it get done really quickly? Did you get done before the 12 months we assigned to you? How did that work with what you thought you'd have at the beginning of this whole process when you filled out that application? Finally, we also need to know how the products from your project will be publicly accessible. Since we're working with funding that is from the state taxpayer dollars, all the products have to be publicly accessible. There are very specific exceptions to that, but for the most part, your product will need to be in a public repository for people to read, view, access. Okay, where is your final report? If you have a large grant, look under Section 5, Financial Documentation and Final Reporting. That gives you information about what we expect for the final report. Small grant agreement, similar information, different section of your agreement. You'll find that under Section 2, Final Reports and Project Products. So it not only talks about, what do you need for reporting, what do you need for financial documentation, what do we want to see as your final product, your deliverable. When you get to the grants portal where the report is housed, the one that you're actually going to fill out, you'll be looking under reports due in the gray navigation pane that is on the left of your screen when you log into the portal. And I do have some screenshots that we can look at in just a couple minutes. There are a number of narrative questions you will need to answer. They are fairly straightforward. Project period. When did your project start and end? If you need help remembering what your project period was, it is listed in your grant agreement right on the first page. All the project work should fall within those approved project dates, your project start and end dates. Both of those fields do need to be filled out. We need to know when you started and when your work was completed, and that has to do with documenting expenditures and basically for the expenditures. So make sure you fill that piece out, move on to completed work. It will ask you, what did you do? What did you end up with when you got to the end of your report or the end of your project? Did you meet all your conditions? And here's where it's a little bit of a reminder for you. If you didn't meet all of the conditions on your grant, if you have condition reports or milestone reports that are still open on your grant, and you have to mark no, everything's not completed, stop, save your changes to your final report. Go make sure that those conditions and milestones are completed. Same thing goes for if you have an open amendment to your grant. Make sure all those interim reports are closed before you move on to the final report, because in some cases, information you get back from the reviewer on your interim reports might mean you need to do some revisions to your project, to your product, before you submit the final report. So make sure that you get your feedback and then move on to the final report. The contractors and consultants section is a listing of who you hired for your project. It does ask for full contact information. So fill out what you can, names and some basic, like a website or email address is helpful. What we're really looking for is a number of who worked on the project. How many people did this affect? The state does look at how many people were hired as a result of these grants that they're funding. So that's one of the things that we do report to the state. And that goes under that next section, staff hours and number of consultants. So those first two questions, and we'll kind of run through this too with the screenshots, but those first two questions are asking how many hours did either new staff or part-time staff who had some grant hours added to their time. How many hours did they put in on the project? And the last question is how many consultants, how many vendors, how many firms did you hire? So that's just looking for a number of how many people did you hire as opposed to how many hours did your staff put in. There's a section for changes. So if you had any major changes to your project, go ahead and note that. Sometimes there's nothing, sometimes there is something. So go ahead and write down anything that you think you might be helpful for explaining the project. Anything that you think might be helpful for some of your colleagues out around the state who might want to know about this particular kind of project that you finished. Anything that they should be aware of if they undertake a similar project. Measurable outcomes will be pulled in from your application, so that will look very familiar, and you can talk about how you've met some of those more short-term outcomes. Same thing with enduring value. That comes from your application as well. What is the enduring value to the project? What will the public be able to see, view, read? How is it going to be useful to Minnesotans going forward? So those are some things you can think about as you are working on this project. Here we are at the portal. This page should look very familiar to you as the project director. Log in with your username and password. Click sign in. I skipped over the first page, the introductory page with all the information on the right side of your screen. I went straight to reports due here. So when you are in the portal, you've got this great navigation pane over here on the left. Your application for your new applications is up on the top. Information about open, maybe drafts that you're working on is in the middle. What you're looking for now is the reports that are toward the bottom. You might need to scroll down a little bit to get to the reports. But you've got three categories: reports due, reports submitted under review, and then reports approved. The portal is helpful because it will tell you how many reports you have in each of these folders. In this case, I made up a very simple example. It just has the one final report. But if you have any conditions, if you have milestones, if you have amendment reports, those will all show up in this same section. When you click on reports due, all of the reports that are in new status or returned status that you have something to do, you need to fill it out, you need to upload information, it's an action you need to take. Those will all show up in this middle section. So as you can see, as I mentioned, there's just the final report that's due right now. You click on the one you want, and it'll populate in read-only view on the right side of your screen. And then in order to get to the report so you could fill it out, you go to the upper right and you click on that edit button. That will allow you to get into all the fields in the final report. Now, remember a couple minutes ago, I talked about your project period. You've got your date project work started, and the date project work was completed. There are a couple ways you can fill this out. You can either type the date right into the field, just standard with the slashes, 3/27/2024. You can use the calendar option here, where you just click the little calendar icon at the side and fill this out. You'll need to choose your month, choose your year, and then choose your day. Now, word of caution. Most of our grant projects overlap into another calendar year. So make sure you're choosing the correct year because it defaults to the current year. If you started your project the year before, make sure you change that. Otherwise, it will mess up your numbering. It will look like you started at the wrong time. And then I'm going to ask about it, of course. So double check your year and put in month, year, and then the day. Once you click on the day, it'll populate in this field and you'll be able to move on to the next field. Okay. Another handy thing about these reports, which you've probably already noticed if you had any condition reports due on your project. Once you are in edit mode, this left section is grayed out, so you can't go accidentally click into some other folder over here or on another grant report because you are in your one report in edit mode. So tab through, keep answering your questions. We talked about all of these before. This section here is worth repeating. It's a little tricky. It's looking for 3 different numbers. Number of full-time staff you hired for the grant project specifically. How many hours did they put in? The second is for number of part-time staff. So if you had somebody working 20 hours a week and you increase their hours by another 10 hours per week for them to specifically work on the project, how many total hours did they put in on the project? This third line is asking for the number of people, not the number of hours. So they're looking for how many vendors, consultants, contractors did you hire? How many firms did you hire to get your project done? If any of these need a 0, they don't apply, you don't have a number, just put in a 0, otherwise enter your numbers. And then down here, we've got the changes to your original work plan and ask you to talk about that a little bit. That one I always find interesting, especially if I've got grantees who have other projects that are similar to yours. I might end up doing a little bit of networking. If they have questions about a particular type of grant project, you might end up being a resource for them. Okay, expenditures. We're going to spend a little time talking about the expenditures table. Looks a lot like the budget table you filled out in your application. The budget table we're now calling the project expenditures table because you spent the money. You're telling us to the penny, how much did you spend in grant funds and how much did you spend in cash match or in people power, in-kind time, volunteer time. And we're looking for actual expenditures to the penny for this program because we're using state funding. They want us to account to the penny how much was spent. You're going to record your actual match, cash and in kind or volunteer. And then if you have a contingency, which most often happens with construction projects, you add a little bit in case the costs go up. You might have a line item on in your budget that was just for contingency, 10, 15% of your budget. However, when you report it as an actual expenditure, it's not going to be on that same line item because you didn't actually spend money on a contingency. It's not really a thing. You spent money on one of those other line items. Your masonry cost more. Your roof cost more. You had to spend more on a consultant that took extra time to do some reporting. So that contingency will actually be reported on different existing line items in your budget, in your expenditures. If your project came in under budget, you might have some funds that you need to return to the program. In that case, part of the closure process with me will be that you'll receive a letter from me saying, okay, your grant has been reviewed. It's met all of our guidelines, looks good. However, you came in under budget and we paid out X amount in your grant, and we will ask you to send back the unspent grant funds. Those grant funds go back into our grant program, and they are regranted in an upcoming grant round, in a future grant round, unless the funds are expired. If the funds are expired, then our finance department sends the money back to the state. So you know what happens if you come in under budget. If you go over budget, then you have the opposite issue. Then you need to find some of your own funding to cover that overage. So if you have a designated account for that, if you had some volunteers who were able to cover something, and it all depends on what type of project you had. But unfortunately, we're not able to give additional funding once we've granted a project. So then that comes out of your operating expenses or donations or whatnot. Okay, large grants. Our large grants are anything over $10,000, and those grants are all required to upload financial documentation for all project expenditures. And that includes grant funded or in kind or cash. And then in-kind match must be documented with timesheets. So make sure that your volunteers or staff have timesheets that show the days they worked, the hours they worked on the project, and their hourly wage or equivalent. So we've got a dollar amount for their time that they put into the work. The form's available on the grants portal. So if you're in there, in that grade navigation pane, you can click on forms and it is right in there for you to use, or you can use your own. You can put together an Excel spreadsheet, whatever works for you, Word doc, table. Just make sure you have name, date worked, number of hours worked, hourly rate or equivalent, and then have somebody sign off on that so it's official. Okay, your final expenditures table looks a little bit like this. You've got your budget item. This should look very familiar from the budget in your application. You've got your grant amount here. That's the amount that was awarded. If you had an amendment and you changed some of your line items, you will see those dollar amounts show up here. And then the match amount comes from your budget in your application. So you're going to be filling out how much you spent in your grant funds, and how much you spend in match as applicable. You may not have match. So these are the two columns you're going to be looking at. They don't actually look like this when you're in edit mode. And I'll get to that in just a moment, but just keep in mind that you just have to put in the dollar amount. You don't have to put in the dollar sign. You don't have to do any addition because these columns will add for you. So whatever you type in up here will end up down here, all totaled for you. When you are in edit mode, you will see that that table actually looks like this. So you have your text to show you which line item is which, how much of the grant was allotted to that line item, and how much match. And then you're going to put in how much of the grant funds did you spend on this line item, and how much did you have in your match. And you'll do that for each of your budget line items. And when you're done with that, make sure you click save. Once you click save, it goes back to this table view. And then you can see that these fields are now filled in and totaled for you at the bottom of the screen. When you have everything ready to go, you can click the resubmit button or the submit button. Resubmit is if it's been returned to you. Maybe you forgot to upload your photos or your final product or your expenditure receipts and invoices. So we had to send it back to you. The submit button then becomes a resubmit button, but it is always, whether it's save or submit or resubmit, is always in the bottom right corner. Make more changes, your edit button is always up here in the upper right corner. Okay, you're going to upload all your project documentation to the Upload Final Report Documents Here section. This is just like your application and just like your other reports. If you uploaded anything to those, you're going to upload deliverables for your final report. What were the products from your grant project? If you're not sure what these are, you're going to want to look at the final product section in your grant agreement or your grant contract. That will tell you what we're expecting to see. It might be a book manuscript, might be an exhibit script, might be oral history transcripts, photos of your building, architectural drawings for building. It really depends on what type of project you had. Besides your deliverables, you are going to be reporting on your in-kind time or volunteer time. If you had any, you're going to be uploading all those timesheets or logs for each person who put time in on the project but was not paid with grant funds. So that's your in-kind and your volunteer time. And again, for large grants over $10,000, financial documentation, all your invoices, receipts, and payroll information, if that is applicable to your project. Acceptable documentation, timesheets or logs for your staff time. And like I said, you want to have the name, dates worked, number of hours, hourly rate, total dollar amount. So we can verify that, yes, the work did take place within the grant period that was assigned to you. And again, receipts, invoices, payroll documentation. And please make sure they're legible and include the dates of service or an invoice date. We don't need to see statements. And if you're uploading receipts and you're taking like photos, you're uploading like a JPEG or something, make sure you have all the whole thing in there, because I've seen some that like are missing dates or missing dollar amounts, and that I'm going to have to go back and ask you for a new copy. So make sure it's all legible. Okay, when you're uploading project documents, here we are back in our edit mode. You don't actually have to be in edit mode of the report to upload documents, but you might be if you're just filling out your whole report at once. You're going to go down to Upload Final Report Documents here. Click on the little green button with the plus sign. And then you get your little wizard here, which will allow you to upload all your documents. You click on Add Files, which will take you to another pop-up box where you can grab all your files out of your computer and upload them to Add Files. And then when you're ready to upload them, you click on Start Upload. Once you click Start Upload, you'll see them all go from 0% to 100%. So you know when they're all at 100%, everything's uploaded, and you could X out of this box. Once you X out of the box, you'll be taken back to your report, and you'll be able to see your whole line, your whole list of your final report documents that you put in to the portal. If you forgot one, you can always go back and click this and do the process again. You can do it as many times as you want. And you can add what you need, all your deliverables, all your expenditure information. When you have it all done, click Save. The system's kind of helpful because it will tell you that there's an update available. This update available basically means that you've made a change to your report. You filled some things in and you saved it. So that means that the save took. Sometimes if you move too quickly between filling in, clicking save, clicking buttons, the system gets a little agitated and might not be working quite as fast. So give it a little time to update, and then you're going to click Submit Now to get those documents to our review queue and out of yours. I know our boxes have changed just a little bit over time. I'm not sure if they still have the note for Submit Now. You do not need to fill anything out there. I think it's just a box that might say, hey, you're submitting a report. But regardless, if you do get this pop-up box, you have to click OK, whether you put a comment in or not, whether anything, click OK, because if you click the X or you click the cancel, your report will not be sent to our queue. The system will think you still have work to do and you didn't mean to submit it. So if you're ready to submit and you know you've got everything in, click that OK button. Once you do that, you'll see it disappears from your queue. And you'll also see that your status changes to under review, and you know that it's gone to our review. Also, it won't be in your reports due queue any longer. It will be over here and submitted under review. And then when we approve it, it goes into reports approved. So you never lose access to your reports. They just move into different folders over here in the portal. If your report gets returned, as I mentioned before, maybe you forgot to upload your financial documents, or who knows? It could be something that we still need to look at. We've returned it. Your status will now say sent back for revision. And you'll see it back here under reports due. It'll go back in there. Same process. Click Edit, make your changes, click Save, click Resubmit. The return report information will be toward the bottom of the final report. And here where it says reason for return final report, you should see a note from your content reviewer or from me or one of our admins if it's an administrative issue. But there will be an explanation here, and there should also be contact information so you can contact us and ask questions. If you have comments back for us, you'll be able to put them in the grantee notes section once you click the edit button. It might be that you just need to upload some additional information, and you can upload your information and then click resubmit. You might not have to actually fill in any other fields. Depends on the situation. Again, make sure you click OK. Send that report back to our review queue. And again, it will show under review. After the staff review, just to give you a little idea of what we're doing with it over here, because we do have 30 days to review each of the reports that comes into our queues. Reviewers will approve the final report, and you as the project director will get an email alert saying that it's been approved. You, as the project director, will get a closure letter via email. If you owe funds back that you didn't spend from the grant, that closure letter will request the dollar amount that we have determined you're owing, and information on how to return a check to us. And if it's closed, if you spent all the money, everything's good to go, you'll just get a letter saying your grant is closed. The grant staff will close the grant in the portal. That's usually me. And then you will get an alert also for that saying your grant is closed. And that's an auto alert from the portal itself. For large grants, if you still have funds owed to you, if you either have that 10% or that 20% retainage, those funds will be mailed to you by our finance department. You'll get a check for that. And the letter I send out will indicate how much you should expect to get back. If you owe funds back, like I said, the letter will include directions on returning them. So if you get your letter and you find that the numbers don't look quite like what you expected, let me know. Send us an email to grants@mnhs.org, grants@mnhs.org. Let us know and we can take another look. We've talked a little bit about troubleshooting. My reminder is to not X out of things, but click OK. So if you submitted the report and it's still in your queue, make sure that you actually click that submit button. That submit button is the action that gets your report out of your queue and into ours. If you can't click into the boxes to type your answers, you need to remember to click the edit button at the top right of your screen. Because if you submit a blank final report form, I will send it back. We do need that information. Some of it we use for our own reference. Some of it we have to report to the state. So we will need that filled out. If you can't see any reports at all, chances are you don't have access because you're not listed on the grant. So if that's the case, let us know and we can take a look and see what's going on with your authorized users. Okay. Contact information. If you do have general questions on the final report, let us know. grants@mnhs.org. Specific project-related questions can go to your content reviewer, and you can find them here on our website, mnhs.org/preservation/about. But you know what? It's just easiest to remember grants@mnhs.org, and we can get you where you need to go. A very important reminder, since this is taxpayer dollars that we're using for this program, you must acknowledge the funding source. Definitely use the legacy logo when you are promoting your grant. Make sure it's on your final report products. The legacy logo is available online on the state legacy site. We have a link to it on our website. We also have a link in the final report. So when you get down to that budgeting section in the final report form, you can click on a link to get you to the logo if you still need to add it. Thank you. Thank you for listening today. I hope this helps you fill out your final report. If you have any questions, please contact our office, grants@mnhs.org. Thank you.